Chosen one, you are here today on this specific day because God arranged this moment. March 10th, that is today, and what I am about to tell you cannot wait because the window I want to speak about is not in the future, it is now, right now. These 3 days, March 10th, 11th, and 12th, are what the ancient Hebrews called the set time, the appointed window, the moment God marked in eternity, long before you arrived at it. There was a woman named Esther who had 3 days that changed everything, not 3 dramatic, miraculous days that looked impressive from the outside, 3 quiet days. 3 days of preparation, of prayer, of positioning her heart to receive what God had already arranged. These are your 3 days. I want to be honest with you. I cannot tell you exactly what will happen. I am not here to make promises I cannot keep. But I can tell you what the pattern of Scripture shows what happens to those who recognize their window and walk through it, and it is extraordinary. Your season of preparation has not been wasted. Every silent year, every unanswered prayer, every moment of faithful waiting, it was building toward this. You have been in preparation. This is arrival. Do not look away. There are 2 kinds of time. Most people only know one. It is the kind that moves in a straight line forward, always forward, 1 second after the next, 1 year after the last. The ancient Greeks called it chronos. It is ordinary time, the clock on your wall, the calendar on your phone. But there is another kind. The ancient word for it is kairos. And kairos is not about the quantity of time, it is about the quality of it. The appointed time. The right time. The moment that has been held in God's hand, set apart, waiting for the one it was prepared for. You have probably felt kairos without knowing its name. It is that moment when something shifts, not visibly, not loudly, but unmistakably. When a conversation changes the direction of your life. When a door opens that was never supposed to be there. When something you prayed for in the dark finally steps into the light. Those were kairos moments. And what I want you to understand from the very beginning is this. March 10th, 11th, and 12th are kairos days. Not because of anything special about the numbers themselves, but because God's pattern consistent across thousands of years of Scripture shows us that He works in appointed windows, and this is one of them. Now, most believers understand that God has a plan. That is not the question. The question is whether they understand that His plan moves in specific, strategic seasons, and that those seasons have entry points. For a long time, many of us were taught to hold God's timing in a vague way. We say things like, "It will happen when He is ready," or "everything in His time," and those things are true. But they can become a kind of spiritual passivity if we are not careful. We wait without watching. We believe without preparing. We hold the promise, but never prepare the space for its arrival. Joseph understood this the hard way. He had a dream given by God, a dream about his future, about who he was meant to become, about what he would one day carry, and then everything went wrong. His brothers turned against him. He was thrown into a pit. He was sold. He was forgotten. And if you read that story only looking at the surface, it looks like a series of random, painful events with no design behind them. But here is what the surface view misses. Every painful stop on Joseph's journey was preparation. The pit stripped him of his pride. The years of service built his character. The prison refined his wisdom. And then, in what seemed like a single moment, a door opened. One conversation, one dream interpreted, and everything shifted at once. That is Kairos working through Chronos. That is God's appointed moment breaking through the ordinary surface of time. And it does not look dramatic from the inside. It looks like just another day, until you realize it was the day. This is where the pattern of 3-day windows becomes so important, because across Scripture, 3 days almost never appears randomly when it comes to divine timing. 3 days marks a specific kind of window, a window of preparation that leads directly into the moment of transformation. Look at Esther again. When she understood that her people were in danger, and that she alone was positioned to do something about it. She did not rush in. She did not act on impulse or desperation. She said, "Fast 3 days for me, do not eat or drink, and after that I will go before the king." 3 days. And those 3 days were not delay, they were the mechanism. They were how she positioned herself to walk through a door that was already open, a door she could only walk through if her heart was ready. Then there is Jonah. 3 days in the deep, in the place of darkness and confusion and complete powerlessness. And on the other side of those 3 days, a release, a commissioning, a going forth into exactly the purpose he had spent so long running from. And Joseph, this time through his gift of interpretation in Genesis 40, 2 men, 2 dreams, and both interpretations hinge on the same phrase, within 3 days. 3 days, and the appointed shift happens. 3 days, and the hidden thing surfaces. 3 days, and the story turns. The pattern is consistent. Day 1 revelation. The thing that has been hidden becomes visible. God begins to show you what he has been working toward. Day 2 alignment. Something in you releases, something misaligned surrenders. You move from striving into surrender. Day 3 receiving. The hands open, the heart opens. What was being prepared from the beginning is finally received. March 10th, 11th, and 12th. Now I want to ask you something, and I want you to stay with it honestly. There are 5 signs that this window is specifically for you, for the ones who are in this appointed season. See how many of these feel familiar. The first sign is an unusual restlessness that you cannot explain by your circumstances alone. Nothing terrible is happening on the outside, but on the inside, something is moving, shifting, stirring, and you cannot make it stop. The second sign is that your dreams have felt more real than usual. Not necessarily dramatic or prophetic, just vivid, close, present. Like something is trying to communicate from a place deeper than your waking thoughts. The third sign is a returning thought, a promise you once held, maybe years ago, that you almost let go of. It keeps coming back, quietly, persistently, like it refuses to be forgotten, even though you have tried to release it. The fourth sign is an unexpected clarity about what you want, not what you think you should want, not what looks good from the outside, something specific, something personal, something that feels almost too clear to be coincidence. And the fifth sign is a sense that something is very close. You cannot see it yet. You cannot name it. But you know, in the part of you that knows things before your mind catches up, that you are standing near something you have never stood near before. If 3 or more of those felt true for you, then what I am about to cover in this video is directly for you. Before I go further, if you want to understand what God is really releasing in these 3 days, what the deeper purpose behind this window is, and how to practically position yourself to receive what has been prepared, stay to the end. Because by the time this is over, you are going to understand your season differently. You are going to see why the waiting was not wasted. You are going to receive something for your heart that you have been carrying a longing for quietly, privately, for a very long time. Stay with me. Most people, when they hear a message like this one, take away the urgency. They think, okay, I need to be spiritually alert for the next 3 days. And that is good. That is the surface understanding, and it is true. But there is something deeper being released in this window, something more specific, more personal, more tender than a general call to alertness. And if you only receive the surface, you will miss the thing God most wants to give you. Because these 3 days are not only about your calling, they are not only about your purpose or your spiritual growth. Those things matter deeply. But there is something God has been quietly working in the hidden place, something that touches the most personal part of your life, and this window is where it begins to surface. Here is the complicating truth. While you have been in formation in the wilderness, in the waiting, in the long season of preparation, God has not only been forming you, He has been forming someone else, in a different place, through a different journey, along a different path. And these 3 days are part of the divine choreography that has been slowly, precisely moving you both toward each other. Chosen one, you are not someone who is still waiting for life to begin. You are someone whose life has been building towards something, towards someone, and the window opening right now is not only a spiritual window, it is a relational one. Look at Esther one more time, when Mordecai said to her, "Who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" He was not only speaking about her destiny, he was speaking about her becoming the answer to someone else's prayer. Her emergence into her moment was not just for her, it was for every person who would be reached by what she was about to do. When you step into what God has prepared in this window, you become the answer to a prayer you did not know was being prayed. And someone specific, someone God has been forming just as carefully as He has been forming you, has been praying for exactly you. Now, something has been shifting inside you. You may not have named it yet, but there is a softening in this season that was not there before. Walls that felt necessary, walls you built to protect yourself after being hurt, after being overlooked, after being let down, those walls have been getting quieter, not gone, just quieter, as if something in them knows that what is coming is not a threat. There is a longing that has become harder to ignore, not a desperate longing, not the anxious kind that grasps and rushes, a different kind, a readiness, a quiet sense that the becoming you have been walking through is nearly complete and something in you is beginning to look up. And here is how to recognize a God-prepared connection when it arrives, because the enemy of this kind of gift is not always rejection. Sometimes it is misrecognition. A connection God has prepared brings peace even when it arrives in an unexpected form. It aligns with who you are becoming, not the version of yourself you have been trying to leave behind. And it feels like arrival, not performance, not pressure, not the familiar sense that you need to shrink to fit or exaggerate yourself to be wanted. It feels like finally arriving somewhere you were always supposed to be. I want to speak to those of you carrying a very specific longing, not just for purpose but for a companion, for the one God has been preparing somewhere in a different season to meet you in yours. That longing is not weakness. It is not something to be managed away. It is God's invitation to prepare your heart to receive what He is already working toward. Something that many in this community have found meaningful, and I want to share this with complete honesty, is a portrait service that over 43,000 people have used as a simple act of faith. A way of saying with an open hand, God, I believe you are preparing someone. I am choosing to hold the space for it, to visualize it, to bring it before you in prayer. I need to be clear about what this is and what it is not. This is not a guarantee. This is not a prediction of who you will meet or when. It is a beautiful act of opening your heart, a way of making an invisible longing into something you can hold and pray over. Many people have found it to be a moving confirmation of what God is already doing. What it becomes for you is between you and God. If your heart is open to this, the link is in the description below and in the first pinned comment. Only if you feel led. Now, let us bring this back to these 3 days, because knowing what God is releasing is not enough. You need to know how to position yourself to receive it. Today, March 10th, this is the day of revelation. Right now, wherever you are, just ask God one question, not out loud, in the quiet of your own heart. Ask Him to show you one thing you have been blind to in this season, one area where His perspective is different from the story you have been telling yourself about your life, your readiness, your worth, your future. You do not need to go anywhere. You do not need to do anything complex. Just ask, and then let the question sit. Trust that the one who reveals hidden things is already answering before you finish the asking. Tomorrow, March 11th, that is the day of alignment. Your one action is this: release something. one belief that has kept you smaller than you are. One pattern you have been holding on to because it felt like protection, but has actually been a ceiling. Not in shame, not with condemnation. Just say, quietly, honestly, I release this to you. I am choosing alignment over familiarity. One question, one release, that is all. And March 12th, the third day, the day of receiving, we will get to that. Because what comes next takes everything we have covered and shifts the entire frame. Changes the entire meaning of what these 3 days are really asking of you. And I promise you, you do not want to miss what is coming. I told you at the beginning that ignoring these days will cost you, and I need to come back to that word now. Because the way most of us hear that word cost is through the lens of punishment. Miss the window, lose the blessing. Step out of line, and God takes something back. Show up too late, and the door is closed forever. That is the surface reading, but it is not the truth. Here is what I want you to hear instead, and I want you to hold it carefully, because this changes everything about how you understand what these 3 days are asking of you. The cost of ignoring a divine window is not that God takes something from you, it is that you stay closed while He opens. The door opens from His side, every time. That has always been His job, and He is faithful to it. What remains on your side, the only thing that can actually get in the way, is the posture of a closed heart. A heart that is still protecting itself. A heart that believes the good cannot possibly be real. A heart that has been waiting so long that it forgot what it was waiting for. That is the cost. Not punishment, not loss, not God's withdrawal. Just you, standing at a door that is open and not walking through. This is what Esther understood when Mordecai said to her, if you stay silent at this time, relief and deliverance will come from another place. He was not threatening her, he was telling her the truth with love. God will do what God will do. The plan does not collapse because one person hesitates, but the person who hesitates misses their moment. And the cost is not fire and consequences. The cost is simply you remain in the old posture when God is offering you a new one. I want to be careful here, because I know some of you have been carrying a lot of shame around seasons where you feel like you missed it, where you feel like you were not ready, or you did not respond in time, or you let fear make the decision. And I want to say directly to you, God is not a rigid accountant. He is a loving Father who meets you exactly where you are. The window does not slam shut the moment you look away, but it does not wait indefinitely either. And you already know in the part of you that knows things before your mind catches up that right now is the time. So, if the cost is not punishment, if it is only the cost of remaining closed, then the real question is, what is God trying to give you that requires you to be open? Because this is what I believe the deepest truth of these 3 days is asking. Not alertness for its own sake, not spiritual activity for its own sake, but a specific kind of openness, a receiving posture that makes you available to something God has been moving toward you for a very long time. And here is what that something actually is. These 3 days are about the fullness of what you have been prepared for. Not the beginning of preparation, you have been in preparation for years. Not the promise of preparation, someday the arrival of it. The moment the ancient Hebrew writers called the fullness of time, when everything that was being quietly built underneath the surface finally breaks into the open. You know what that moment looks like in a garden. You cannot see the seed growing. You cannot see the root system expanding, deepening, reaching. You just see dirt, day after day, just dirt. And then one morning, something is there that was not there the night before. Not because something new happened overnight, because everything that happened underground finally had enough, finally broke through. You are at the breakthrough point. And I want to speak directly to the thing that could still stop you from receiving it, because it is not the enemy outside, it is not the circumstances around you, it is something much more familiar, much more quiet, much harder to spot because it sounds reasonable. It is the voice that says, "This is too good for me." Not out loud, usually, not dramatically. Just a soft, persistent whisper underneath all your faith and all your hope that says this kind of thing happens for other people. People who are further along. People who have more together. People who have not made the mistakes you have made, or waited as long as you have waited, or carried as much confusion in their journey as you have. That whisper is not from God, and it has been operating in you for so long and so quietly that you may not have even recognized it as a lie. You may have just called it realism, caution, maturity, a way of protecting yourself from disappointment. But here is what I want you to know. The pattern of God consistent across every story we have looked at today is to choose exactly the person that whisper says would be disqualified. He chose Joseph, who was forgotten in prison. He chose Esther, who was hidden in a foreign palace. He chose the one who had been carrying the promise through seasons that made no sense, through delays that felt like abandonments, through silence that felt like rejection. He chose them not in spite of all of that, but through all of that. Your long season did not disqualify you. It qualified you for this. Now I want to call out who you actually are, not who you have been told you are, not who fear has convinced you to play small as. Who you actually are, the identity God has been forming through everything you have walked through. You are a seer. You were built to perceive what others cannot, to sense what is happening beneath the surface, to recognize patterns that most people walk right past, to feel in your spirit when something sacred is near. That sensitivity is not a burden, it is a gift, and it is how you recognized, before you had any logical reason to, that these days were different, that something was being offered. Your body knew before your mind did. That is the seer in you. You are a spiritual warrior. And I want to say this carefully, because a warrior does not mean someone who fights hard and stays angry. A warrior is someone who holds ground. A warrior is someone who does not collapse under the weight of the waiting, does not cave when the delay drags on longer than it should, does not abandon the post just because no one else seems to understand why they are still standing there. You held ground. Through the wilderness, through the silence, through every season where giving up would have been the easier choice. That was not stubbornness. That was the warrior in you keeping faith with what was coming. You are a hope restorer, and this one is particularly important for this season because what God is releasing in this window is not just for you. When you step through this door, when you receive what has been prepared for you, you become evidence, living, visible, undeniable evidence that the wait is worth it, that the promise does not lie, that God is faithful to the ones who keep believing when it does not make sense. Someone is watching your life who has almost given up, and your stepping through will give them the courage to keep going. And you are a truth carrier. This is why you have never been able to settle, why every counterfeit relationship, every almost right opportunity, every version of good enough felt wrong in a way you could not explain to anyone else. It is not that you are too picky or too particular. It is that you are wired to recognize the real thing. And that wiring is not a flaw. It is the thing that has kept you in alignment for the moment when the real thing arrives. I want to give you one picture that I believe will stay with you long after this message ends. Think about a GPS. When you make a wrong turn, it does not freeze up. It does not punish you. It does not say, "Sorry, your route has been cancelled." It simply does one thing. It recalculates. And the recalculation is not starting over. The recalculation is finding the fastest way from where you are now to where you were always supposed to end up. Every detour gets accounted for. Every delay gets rerouted. And the destination does not change. You have not been on the wrong road. You have been on the recalculated road, the road that God designed, knowing exactly which turns you would take and which seasons would shape you and which delays would be necessary to bring you to a place of readiness, and the destination has not changed. You are not behind. You are right en route. Now, March 12th, the third day, the day of receiving. You do not need to do anything elaborate. You do not need to engineer anything or make something happen or perform your way into a breakthrough. The one thing this day asks of you is the simplest and hardest thing. Open your hands. Not physically or physically if you want to, but this is an action of the heart first. In the quiet of wherever you are right now, let something in you shift from clenched to open, from controlled to surrendered, from managing to receiving. And in that posture, just speak it, not as a performance, just as truth. Say it as simply as you mean it. I receive what you have prepared. I receive your timing. I receive the connections you have arranged. I receive who you have been forming me to become. And if you want to seal this moment, type the word open in the comments below. Just that one word. It is your way of saying, I am here.